Um, can everybody hear me okay? Great. Yeah, welcome and thank you for joining us for a virtual tour of Oregon Dairy Farm. Before we get started, I'd just like to encourage folks who might not be sure to make sure your cell phones are turned off. I'm Joe McMahon. I'm the Director of Sustainability Partnerships at the Innovation Center for U.S. Dairy. Just for those who aren't aware, the Innovation Center for U.S. Dairy is not actually a center. It's a virtual organization that falls within DMI, the Farmer Checkoff. And our mandate is to bring together the broader industry, processors, cooperatives, and farmers to really address some of the issues that are more pre-competitive, that a single organization really doesn't need to be trying to tackle alone. That includes things like food safety and foundational aspects of dairy, but it also includes sustainability and the fact that we're under an environment where more and more consumers want to know where their food comes from and how it's produced. Part of that work is the Sustainability Awards program, and I'll be the first to say that there really isn't anything more important than a farmer advocate. Yeah, I was just talking to the folks here about how I don't know a lot of farmers that want to get up and self-promote about the great things they do every day. But as more and more folks, as more and more just everyday people that buy dairy products are removed from the farm, it's just so important because it tells such great stories around the family values and the work ethic and the connection to the land that a lot of people are now missing. Let me tell you just a little bit about the awards ceremonies, and I'm going to have to read from the script on this, I'm sorry. One way we recognize the industry's commitment is through the awards program. There's actually 4 different categories that are focused on outstanding dairy farms, businesses and partnerships for socially responsible, economically viable, and environmentally sound practices. So our 4 categories are outstanding dairy farm sustainability, outstanding dairy processing and manufacturing sustainability, outstanding achievement in resource stewardship, and outstanding achievement in community partnerships. Since 2011, we have honored 48 farms and businesses that have shown how innovations and improvement sparked by one person or one organization can have a ripple effect that goes beyond their farm gate or front door. One of those farms is Oregon Dairy. It's in Lancaster County, Pennsylvania. It was a 2015 Outstanding Dairy Farm Sustainability Award winner. Over the last few years, I've had the honor of helping to facilitate the judging of the process, convening, external experts who can help kind of influence the direction of who a winner is. And this one has been one of my favorites, I'll admit it. It's a display of stewardship and community engagement in action. And they're sharing their efforts with more than 15,000 visitors who tour the farm every year. Let me introduce you to George Hurst and his daughter Maria Forey so that we can learn about how they're stewarding the earth for the next generation and keeping their community connected to the farm. Finally, I'll say that if you have any more questions about the Innovation Center or the awards program, we have handouts in the back. And if you can think of any outstanding farmers or others in the dairy community who would not be willing to self-nominate and you think they should get the recognition, I encourage you to think about nominating somebody in the coming year. So without further ado, our award winners.
I think we're going to use the towel now. Thank you, Joe. And also thank you for those of you who are showing interest in these kind of programs and virtual tours. Thanks to the Innovation Center for nominating us and then also nominating us for this tour. We appreciate the opportunity, appreciate the challenge too. It's all, with opportunities, with challenges, there's opportunities, we appreciate that. We are located just in Lancaster County, central Lancaster County, which is approximately 3 miles north of Lancaster City, adjacent to the little town of Oregon, consequently the name Oregon Dairy Farm. Also located on the Oregon Pike is our street address. This is the people that are responsible for Oregon Dairy Farm at the present time. It was founded my dad bought the farm in 1952, and he raised his family there. There was 10 children that were raised on this farm. And my dad always had a dream of selling fresh products from the farm directly to the consumer. So consequently, as years evolved, came to fruition in a small way by selling sweet corn along the road, et cetera. Then later on, we developed a partnership, which I'll talk about a little bit more and show the timeline. Presently, right now, we're at the second and third generations on the farm. The second generation is myself. Third generation is Maria Fari, which you see, and her husband Tim, which you see there on your left side. In front of them are their children, Sarah, Seth, and Serena. Tim and Maria have 3 children. Then it's my wife, Jean, and then myself. Jean is holding Chad's foster child, Chad Nicole's foster child, and due to regulations at that point, that's why her picture is blurred. She is actually a cutie. Standing next to me is Nicole, my daughter-in-law, Chad's wife, and then Chad, my son, holding his son, Clay, and then Isaiah and Aaron there in the front. They have 4 children. Tim and Maria's primary responsibility is the dairy herd itself, taking care of the cows, etc. Maria's a parlor Nazi and the HR person, and then Chad takes care of the cropping. Presently now we have 6 full-time employees and some part-time help on the farm. We always had a vision, both my dad and my generation and the third generation, hopefully the generations to follow, to constantly look at a bigger view of life, a bigger view of what is here and now, and look at what we call a 30,000-foot view to see what needs to happen to maintain profitability and also maintain sustainability for both the future generations and also the community, what's good for the community. This is a quick timeline. The farm was, like I said, was purchased in 1952 from my father. In 1960, my dad was an innovator in many ways. In 1965, he bought a no-till corn planter. At that point, we were still plowing and disking, and he bought a no-till corn planter, which did not work so well, and consequently, we didn't do a lot of no-till farming until later on as equipment evolved. In 1974, my dad and I formed a partnership and built a small convenience store where we began selling our own milk from the dairy, and at that point we had a beef cattle, and we were selling our own beef and some produce. In 1979, the store grew to what's presently Oregon Dairy, the market at Oregon Dairy, which is a full-line grocery store. Then in 1980, I purchased a farm from my dad and built a freestyle barn, built these existing facilities that we're working out of at the present time. In 1985, we installed a digester, a methane digester on the farm, which is still operating, which we expanded just several years ago. We added a cafeteria to the grocery store in 1986, and that evolved into what's now the restaurant at Oregon Dairy, a family-style restaurant which serves mostly comfort food, Lancaster County food. It's a 200-seat restaurant which is doing well for us. Maria, if you want to.
And I came into the picture in 2003,
long
before that age-wise, but into the family business. That is when we formed Oregon Dairy Farm LLC, and my brother Chad came in, and my husband Tim and I came in. And we increased the herd numbers to our herd size that we are today around that time. In 2008, we were honored to win the Lancaster County, Pennsylvania Cooperator of the Year Award. And in 2009 is when we transitioned to being fully no-till on the farm with our cropping practices. 2010, we started a composting facility, which you'll hear more about in the presentation, called Oregon Dairy Organics, and we also expanded the methane digester. Back in '85, when Dad built the first one, it was not built to size for the amount of cows that we have today, so we expanded that. In 2011, the market at Oregon Dairy put solar panels on their roof for part of their to help with some of their electrical needs. And in 2015, Joe alluded to, we won the U.S. Dairy Sustainability Award, And we also won the National Dairy Beef Quality Assurance Award as well that year. So that was a big year for us. It was a good year, but it's one of those like, you know, now back to real life is what can happen. So I'm going to do the next several slides. As Dad had said, my husband and I are responsible for the herd. Mainly my husband. I do parts of it. I do the financial books as well, and the employee management. So we have a 4-row freestall barn. It was built back in 1980, and we've done improvements to it, but it is still the old barn that we are using. It is a 350 stall barn, and we use dried manure solids for our bedding, and that drastically cuts our wood shavings use, the sawdust used, because that's what we were using for bedding prior to that. It's a naturally ventilated barn with fans and also sprinkler systems then over the feed alleys. Cow comfort is obviously important for any dairy farmer, and we are no different than that, focusing on cow comfort, keeping them cool and comfortable. We ship most of our milk to DFA. Oregon Dairy, they do process and bottle about 10% of our milk production in a month's time, but the rest we ship to DFA, and so through DFA we are part of the farm program nationally. And we want to keep excellent body condition score on the cows on account of, obviously, milk production, but then also recognizing the fact that our call cows, as I'm told we should actually be calling market cows because they do have a big value for us after they leave the milking herd and are sold for beef production. Our calves, from birth to 8 weeks old, they are housed in the hutches that you see there with the wires out front. We feed them 2 gallons of milk a day. We pasteurize our waste milk, and so that's what we're feeding to them. And then starting at 6 weeks, we cut them down to 1 gallon a day. At 7 weeks old, we cut them down to ½ a gallon a day, and then by 8 weeks, they're totally weaned. At 8 weeks then, we move them into another barn, groups of 6, and then after several weeks, put those 2 groups together and move them up through into larger groups till they're 4 months old, and then they go into a really large group with the others. This is just totally a side note. This was an aha moment I had the other January when we had a big snowstorm. And most of you have probably figured this out long before I ever did. But when you have calf hutches like this and the wires out front, that's a lot of snow to shovel if you get 18 inches of snow. So after the fact, to clean up, we decided let's move all the wires back against the hutches, just drive the skid loader in front to push the snow away. So that worked pretty slick, except for the wires that were frozen into the ground. So then the next time they were calling for significant snow, we took the time and moved all the wires back before it snowed. And then that way it was easy cleaning. And then it's 24 hours later when the storm was done, cleared the snow and moved the wires. So if you haven't had that aha moment, it's something to remember. Because some of my friends, when I told them, they're like, well, yeah, of course. Well, sorry, I didn't figure it out right away. But now I did. We have about approximately 500 replacement heifers. After they're out of the hutches, they're on bedded pack the whole way through until they come into the milking herd. We breed our cows at about 12 months old. 800 pounds is our goal to breed them. For our first service, we are using sex semen. We use select sires. And then if they do not breed with the first service, then we're just using conventional semen after that. For our mature cows, we do use their young sire program quite significantly on the farm. And so also, obviously, heat abatement is huge. So we do what we can with some older facilities and are using, fans and misters as appropriate with the different barns where the animals are. We milk all of our cows 3 times a day. We're milking approximately 475 to 500. Coming off the summer here, we were calving very heavily, and we were milking roughly 510 or so, which is totally maxed out. Not all the cows fit in the holding area, but just so. So there was not room to go beyond that, and we've gradually worked down. Consequently, we are calling more voluntarily as well, and not just involuntarily because of that. Our milking stats, production-wise, we're at about 80 pounds per cow per day, so to me that's just very average. Our somatic cell count is running right around 150,000 for several months. About a year ago, we were down below 100, which was nice, but so we're holding right around 150,000. A 3.0 protein, a 3.75 butterfat. Our calving interval is about 12.1 months is the calving interval that we are currently at. The milking parlor that you see, people who come to our farm, yeah, look at that and go, what is that? It's a polygon shape, so there are 4 rows with 6 cows in each row or section, however you want to describe it. It was built back in 1980, and it was supposed to be the up and coming for efficiency, to get the cows in and out of the parlor quickly. And I think there's a reason we probably don't see more of them around today. It never took off how they thought, but we make it work. However, our parlor efficiency is nothing to brag about at all. Our employees do a great job, but there's only so much you can do with older facilities.
Going back to production other than the dairy and milk production, we do farm about 1,000 acres of corn, soybeans, triticale we farm for seed purposes and combine that and sell the seed. We own about 300 acres and rent the remaining 700 acres. A lot of it's rented right in our neighborhood. Some is rented in another county. Sorry, I put papers together. As I had mentioned earlier, we started with a small convenience store and then built the full-line grocery store, which we call the Market at Oregon Dairy. And then we also have the restaurant, which is the restaurant at Oregon Dairy Farm. Attached to the restaurant, we do have the milk house, where we have an ice cream shop and serve about 30 various flavors of hand-dipped ice cream. Later in the presentation, we'll talk a little more about the farmstead, which is an important component up and coming for our organization. You see Oregon Dairy Organics there, the picture on the lower corner there. That's where we compost it's not an organic farm, but it's where we compost our stable manure, pen pack manure, and haul that out. In the restaurant and in the grocery store, we make sure we have a good offering of local foods. We have a good local supply of produce over summer. We make sure we have a strong offering of that, which is our produce department is our strongest department in our grocery store. And then in the restaurant, we go with as much local as we can. We do give a free cup of milk, a free donut if you order a breakfast, if you come in there for breakfast and so on, to try and promote the store, promote dairy to our local people. We do have the milk processing plant attached to the store, a small processing plant, which you can see working. We bring the milk from the farm via a small milk truck up to the processing plant and actually process the milk directly off the milk truck. Presently we have the commodities that we raise on the farm and we retail right now is primarily milk, fluid milk. We're expanding that to beef in the last year or two with our own pasture-raised beef, and also some of our own vegetables. Those are areas that we really want to grow in the foreseeable future, is the whole local bar and continue to grow and retail more of the products that we can raise and then retail going forward. We do have a lot of signature items in our restaurant and grocery store. To you, I'm not sure where you're all from around in the United States, the signature items in our area would be like mac and cheese. Our baked oatmeal is very popular. Our meatloaf is very popular. Some of the deli items are very popular. And those are signature items that we make and then sell at the restaurant and in the deli. We really have a philosophy and a conviction that we want to be really good stewards of what God has given us to steward and take care of when it comes to raw land and production agriculture. It was in approximately, I'll get that a little bit later, but go back to a little more of that. We were practicing some very stewardship, environmental friendly practices since 1965, and watching our tillage program, contour farming, strip farming, et cetera, to make sure we don't have a lot of topsoil going into the stream and into the rivers. We work hard at not letting anything go to waste on the farm by utilizing the methane from the manure, utilizing pen pack for compost now, and also to use the solar for electricity at the same time. We can't utilize everything, and there's not perpetual motion for us, but we do work hard at having good practices throughout the farming operation and the dairy operation. We did have a commitment to sustainable farming practices and environmental for many years. What really was Maria talked about an aha moment. I had a moment like that back 20 plus years ago when I took a tour with a local farm organization to go down to the Chesapeake Bay, which is some 50, 60 miles south of us. We're in the Chesapeake Bay region of our area, which encompasses Maryland, Virginia, part of New York, Pennsylvania, eastern Pennsylvania. And we were hearing in our area that the Chesapeake Bay is being polluted, and they're really having a struggle down there as far as what's happening to their fish. And I had the opportunity to go down there with a local farm group and see exactly what was happening down there, and saw what those farmers, and they're not livestock farmers and they're not production crop farmers, but they're fish farmers. And hearing their stories, how many of those families are now bankrupt and broke and out of business, basically because they were experiencing drought after drought in the last number of years because the bay became polluted and they lost a lot of their fisheries and had to go out of business. That really left an impact on me. Also the fact that we had just come off of a drought in Lancaster County where we had hardly any crops. We don't often dry up in Lancaster County, but it was right over a time when we did have a few drought years. And I could feel, in a sense, part of the pain that they were feeling, the drought that they're experiencing, that they had to go out of business. And I felt like some of that was our fault, my fault partially, and our fault north of them to help pollute the bay. So there is a strong emphasis in our area right now to work at cleaning up the Chesapeake Bay. And some of the regulations that they're coming with might be off the charts a little bit, but I do believe on the long run it's really important that we work at keeping the environment clean, the streams clean, that all our streams can be cleaner, and there's more viability in our local streams, plus what's happening downstream from us, so they can have a viable resource again. Consequently, we did go with stream bank fencing, planted native bushes and trees along our stream bank and so on to try and sustain that and help clean up the waters. Had an interesting conversation just a week ago with a friend of mine, a peer of mine who's my age, that lived on a farm north of us and has a stream running, this is just a side note, has a stream running through his farm, sizable stream where he remembers going swimming in, but remembers that the water was really dirty, constantly dark and brown. And he came back to the farm in the last 2 years, and he said he's really surprised. He said he hardly ever goes down to that stream now, where you can't walk in and see the bottom of the stream, walk through it and see the bottom of your feet. So there is a success story happening in our area as we work together to try and clean up and do what we can to keep runoff off. Our municipalities are doing a much better job. It wasn't just the farmers, by a long shot, not the farmers that were the only ones that were polluting the bay. That was a bigger picture than that. And it's neat to see how municipalities, agriculture, farming, everyone's working together and trying to do what we can do. And there is definitely some positive results that we're seeing. We try and maintain buffer strips everywhere we farm, that we have either along the roads or streams, et cetera. If we get farm close to waterways, which we have on some of our farms. We make sure that we don't haul manure real close to the waterway, that we stay back and keep buffer strips where we do our farming. Consequently, then in those areas we have to add some fertilizer, and that we do according to how we need it with soil testing and tissue testing of what we need to the added crops. In 2009, we went completely no-till. I haven't tilled our ground since that and been able to no-till. We have seen a tremendous increase in soil vitality in the last number of years. There's a lot more earthworms. Soil is more humus, and because of we do keep cover crop there. As soon as the crop comes off, we try and go back out either with our small grain crop, rye crop, or cover crop, whatever is needed. And that's all his root system that's going down into the ground and has really added soil vitality to us. It keeps our nutrients in place, keeps the topsoil in place, and it's been working really well for us. It's not necessarily, doesn't necessarily work for everyone. For us, it has really been working well, and we plan to continue that. There is some challenges with no-till. Most of it is very positive. Our water that does run off is clean. We don't see topsoil running off. But some of the challenges is to make sure there's good enough equipment out there to do no-till farming. And in the last 10 years, the equipment has really improved, that there is adequate equipment. The other challenge that we have, and it's going to be an ongoing challenge, is when you farm rye or take corn off, it's time to harvest corn, it's time to harvest corn. If you had 3 inches of rain the couple days before, and you go out there with this heavy equipment and heavy silage carts and choppers, you are going to compact soil. So that is a challenge that we have. Our soil compaction isn't near as bad as it had been in the past because of the root systems that are there. But if we're out there and have to go out in the fields on a wet spring or a wet fall, we do have that challenge of soil compaction. And especially if we don't have a hard freeze the following year to get rid of that, that's when we will see a little bit of yield drag if we start getting soil compaction. Consequently, right now we're getting dry, and my son just told me that he's going to go out we do have a slit tiller. We're going to go out in some areas where we drive over the lot, and while the soil's good and dry, you can go and slit till without doing the no-till and just open that up and crack that. So there's areas in our farms where we'll have to do a little bit of slit tillage to open it up because of soil compaction. So that is one challenge. I'm an advocate for no-till farming. With that, like everything else, there is some challenge. That would be probably the primary challenge that we have to deal with. Isn't huge, but it's something that we have to deal with. In 1985, I installed a methane digester, a 60 kW digester. Most of that installation was pits underground. It was enough for 250 or 300 cows, and that's consequently why we had a 60 kW generator that ran that. The main reason for putting a digester in back in the mid-'80s was because of, and I'm not sure many of you are old enough to remember, but in the mid-'80s there was a cry that said, the sky's the limit, and energy prices were going to shoot up. And they did momentarily, but we're back to where we were before. They never really went that high. That was one reason we put the methane digester in. The second reason was we're in a kind of an urban, suburban area where we farm right up against developments, neighborhoods, and so on. So the second reason was for odor control. We find that our manure still stinks when we haul it, but it's not near as strong as it is when you go directly out of a lagoon where it's been laying for some time. So consequently, the PR has been good for us too, because we do haul 6,000 to 8,000 gallons per acre of manure right up against the housing development at times, and that part has also been very advantageous for us. In 2010, we expanded the methane digester because of the addition to the cows. Instead of going underground with our pits, we put that upright silo, that structure up. That's about 150,000 gallons, the same amount that we have underground. We still use the existing digester tanks, but this is the primary one where it's pumped into and heated and mixed and collect the methane from that. The methane collection process is simply collecting the methane gas off the top of that structure. Is not quite full of manure. The top couple feet are simply an open area where the gas comes to the surface of the manure, and then we simply pull that gas off the digester into an engine generator set, which you see there. We produce about 900,000 kilowatts a year. We can produce, on the average, we're producing $7,000 to $10,000 worth of electricity per month. That saves us in electricity. We produce more electricity currently than what we use on the farm in a given time. Then the way we're wired into our grid and into the system, we use that electricity for the house or up into the retail market. So everything, we don't sell anything back to the grid. Everything is used on premises. The engine, with an engine run 24/7, it creates a lot of heat, just like your car or truck engine does. So we have heat exchangers on there. That's how we heat the manure up to 100 degrees. And then we have a lot of excess heat, and we have heat exchangers on to run hot water lines into the milking area, wash water to heat our wash water. Hot water lines run into the house to heat the house, and also for the pasteurizer. We have a small pasteurizer for our calf and use the excess heat to heat the water for that. We put about 15,000 gallons of manure of wastewater in there a day, manure, wastewater, mostly manure. And we also add some liquid food waste, which really enhances our methane production by about 10–15%. It's only a couple thousand gallons a week that we add. We get a tipping fee for that, and we charge what goes into the digester needs to go out. So we put 15,000 gallons a day in, 15,000 gallons a day go out. In a methane digester, you don't get rid of nutrients. You utilize the methane. The nutrients are still there that go out. So our tipping fee is basically what it costs us to haul that back out, and when we get the methane, the added methane production from that. The manure that comes through the digester. We also separate the solids out of that, and then those manure solids are used for bedding, which you don't see the picture. What you see here is our lagoon. It's over 4 million gallon manure storage where we can now store manure for about 8 months. And consequently, it allows us to haul manure right ahead of the crop that we're ready to plant. As soon as our corn silage came off, we went out and hauled manure last week, and then right behind with the drill and seeded. So it allows us that flexibility to haul it when we need it and don't have to top spread it when it's not being utilized. We also have solar panels on the retail market on the roof, which has about 220 kW system, which will produce that at a given time. Come winter time or a lot of cloudy days or rain, obviously, that production is really cut back. We with the methane digester and the solar panels, we only produce about 10–15% of our needed electricity for the retail market, because the grocery store with the freezers, coolers, air conditioning takes a huge amount of electricity, but it does add to it. We do work hard even at the market and resale restaurant area to recycle as much as we can. Recycle the plastic, our cardboard, the vegetable oil out of our restaurant is recycled. We try and keep as much out of the landfill as we can and recycle as much of our products as we can. We have a compost facility where we compost our like I said, our pen pack. And this is what you see here is where our pen pack manure, there's trailer loads of food waste are brought in. And then we mix that with horse manure, and consequently that makes up for our compost that we see. That's the compost turner that's going down the windrow right now. That we aerate or turn those rows of compost 3 or 4 times a week. We try and maintain 140 degrees of temperature in that for about 8 to 10 weeks, and to keep those bugs and bacteria active. What you see now is the screening process. After it's through the composting process, we put it through a screener, screen all the large stuff out. At the end of the day, we had the finished product is really fine that we can spread it through any kind of lawn and garden spreader and so on. It's very dry, not much odor there, and you're able to use it most anywhere. Most of our compost is sold to lawn and garden, or three sources: lawn and garden suppliers come in and get it and rebag it and sell it. Department of Transportation uses some, but a lot of turf, athletic fields, that's food waste that you see that's dumped there which you can't smell, unfortunately, or maybe to the good that you can't smell it in here. That is brought in. Anyway, it's then resold. The compost, the finished product, is sold to athletic fields, golf courses, Department of Transportation, and lawn and garden centers. Trying to think what. Oh, right now in Pennsylvania, there's a law that as these developments are put in, the retention basins need an X amount of inches of compost in the bottom for absorption of water. So right now, there's a lot of compost being hauled out to local construction people.
I'm back now for the rest. So, switching gears away from all of that, this is a picture from 2015 when we received the Sustainability Award. Got to go to Washington, D.C. to receive that. And that's Phil Lempert, the supermarket guru, who was the presenter of the awards. So it was fun to meet him. That was just, an honor to be there to receive the award. And I still say, 2 years later, we got recognized for what most farmers do. We just happen to be the ones that were recognized this year. But there are many, many farms that are doing same things, similar things to that what we are doing at Oregon Dairy. You can see here on this picture that we have fairly close neighbors. That's out the back. That is actually part of a retirement community. Landis Homes Retirement Community is in our backyard. But yeah, there's a lot of development around us. And so it's important for us to be telling our story, to be good neighbors to our neighbors, to help people understand where their food comes from, how we take care of our animals, the things we do to take care of the land. And just a total side note with this retirement community, there's actually a gravel trail that was made between the retirement community and the back of the retail market. So there are lots of golf carts that go back and forth. They either come over for groceries or come to the restaurant to eat. So just little things like that, putting in a little gravel lane so they can go back and forth to be good neighbors to that community in particular. But part of what we want to do on the farm is we want to contribute a positive image for the agricultural community. So these things that we are doing, we hope that the average consumer who is removed from the farm by several generations, that they're seeing agriculture in a positive light, and that will make them think positively of agriculture in general, not just of Oregon Dairy, but that it's for the larger agricultural community. We have different events that bring people to our property throughout a year's time. In the top left there, you see some musicians. That's Stephen Courtney and the Suitcase Band. Oregon Dairy, the market, they clean out their warehouse, and a couple times during the year, in the winter months, they host these little concerts for a couple dollars, and then the people can come and get popcorn and Oregon Dairy chocolate milk, which that is a signature item of ours that we are very well known for in our area, is our chocolate milk. So we have people coming there. You can see below that there's a playground, and that playground actually overlooks the farm. Like the market is here on a hill, and you go down the hill to the farm, and we're on a little bit of a hill, but we're kind of down the hill. So the market and the restaurant, it overlooks the farm. And then the top center there, we have a country cruise-in once a year with a pancake breakfast that is served on the deck at the playground, and that's the part that overlooks the farm. People can, for the country cruise, they can bring their classic cars, antique cars, and show them off for a couple hours. That's not something I have an interest in, but lots of people do, because lots of people come out for that. And then on the right side here, this is our corn maze. We've been doing a corn maze since 2010. That is on 20-acre cornfield. Our farm is here, the market is here, and the corn maze is on the other side, is how the property is laid out. So this year, that's a different theme every year for the corn maze. This year, it is a thank you to first responders. In our area, we have the Lifeline coming out of Penn State Hershey Medical Center. So that's what you see there in the middle, the Lifeline. And then the police badge is there. There's the EMS ambulance down in the corner, and also the fire truck. So it's just a tribute to the first responders. People pay to come and get lost in a cornfield. Some people you probably couldn't pay to get lost in a cornfield, but people come out, thoroughly enjoy it. Thousands of visitors come in the fall. It's open for 6 weeks. They come to the corn maze. And above that, we do a corn pickin' 5K. This is the 3rd year that it's going to be happening, and that actually starts at the cornfield where the corn maze is, and it actually comes down and through our farm, out the back of our farm, and it connects to the retirement community and comes back over through. So it's a really nice, picturesque run for people who like to run. And we actually, that is not a for-profit piece of us at all. We raise it with the proceeds for the Corn Pickin' 5K go actually to Landis Homes, to the retirement community, because they have personal care and nursing care, to their benevolent fund for people who have run out of money. So another way that we work with our neighbors and try and support what they're doing. And the big thing that we do is an event called Family Farm Days, and that is a 3-day event that happens in June, and we have a video now that's going to give you a good overview of that.
If you have questions about where your milk comes from in particular, because I'm a dairy farmer, just ask. No questions are off limits. We want you to understand and know where your food comes from and how your milk is produced.
And as we head across the stream, I want you to notice all of the vegetation that is currently around the stream. That is there for a reason. It is to help filtrate the water that runs through the farm. This filtration happens to keep the water clean. This stream eventually runs into the Susquehanna and then into the Chesapeake Bay. Did you see the sprinklers that are going off? They're on a timer, and that happens to keep the cows cool and comfortable. You'll also notice all the overhead fans. Those are constantly moving air in the barn to keep the cows comfortable. As we round the bend, the 2 tan buildings and the tan silo structure, that is the methane digester here at the farm.
Very honored to present this proclamation from the governor recognizing June as Dairy Month in Pennsylvania. It's as follows. We salute dairy farmers and their families for the strength and vitality they bring to rural communities throughout the Commonwealth, their commitment to using advanced technology for maximum efficiencies, and the animal care, environmental stewardship, and the quality products they provide. Therefore, and this is the important part of any proclamation, that therefore, in recognition of our thriving dairy industry, Tom Wolf, Governor of Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, hereby proclaims June 2017 as Dairy Month in Pennsylvania. Honored to present this, George, to you and the family and to the royalty. Thank you.
So that event is only possible by the cooperation of hundreds of people. There are approximately 150 volunteers that work those 3 days to make it possible. Over 60 businesses, the majority of them are ag businesses from our area that support that. It is planned by staff at Oregon Dairy, the retail side and the farm side, and also Lancaster County Ag Council. It's a group that's very active in our county, and they have different people that are on the planning committee as well to plan the event. Some other organizations that are a huge supporter of it, either with sponsorships or with volunteers, or that would have an educational booth there, would be the Lancaster County Conservation District. Local banks help out. Our Lancaster County 4-H, CNH, they have a plant in New Holland, and so CNH is they provide a lot of volunteers. They get interns for the summer, and we get those interns for a couple days to help. The American Dairy Association Northeast, or Lancaster County Dairy Royalty, and then some of the other exhibitors would be our Pennsylvania Beef Council comes out. This year we finally had our PA pork producers out, which was great. We're always trying to get more organizations and companies involved. And even though it's June Dairy Month, it's on a dairy farm, we like to promote all of agriculture and not just dairy farming. Now I'm going to actually back up to the history of how all of this started. It looks big and impressive now. This actually started back in 1982. The store manager at Oregon Dairy in 1982, I guess, talked to Dad and said, we have these new facilities. Let's get our neighbors out here so they can see what we're doing, how we're taking care of the animals, how we're taking care of the land. So way back then, it was called Barn Open House, is what it was called for a couple days. That was back before the whole farm safety stuff was all a big deal, because I was a tour guide when I was probably 10 to 12 years old, and we used rack wagons and had the hay bales sitting along the side, and so I'm just standing on the back, hanging onto the rail, hoping I don't fall off as we're driving through the barn. And it has since evolved. And in the late 90s, we had our Lancaster Chamber of Commerce had a very active ag committee, and so they were part of the whole planning process, and then as things changed, it became the Lancaster County Ag Council. So it's been an evolution. It did not start like this. It started very small, simple wagon rides through the barn, and the dairy princesses were there to help hand out the milk and ice cream. We had a straw tunnel set up, but it started small and has since grown over the many years. And one more thing before I get to the end here. We do a lot of school tours in our area from April through October. Approximately 2,000 students come to the farm in a year's time. A lot of them end up being preschool to second grade is the primary focus. That's just how it is. We would love to have, there's middle elementary school, junior high, and high school, but it's the preschoolers and things that come out, which is great. If we can start them young, understanding and liking dairy when they're young, hopefully they'll be lifelong consumers is what we hope. And when they come out to for a farm tour, they get a 2-for-1. They get a farm tour, and then they also get a behind the scenes in the grocery store as well. Like in the back of the produce department, the bakery, the warehouse, they get to go see the person in the meat department cutting meat with the big saw, things like that. The behind the scenes that your average person doesn't get to see when they go grocery shopping. So what have we learned? We've learned we can't do it ourselves. Whoops, sorry, wrong slide. So there are just more pictures from Family Farm Days. We can't do it all ourselves. We have to leverage our outside resources. We rely heavily on our nutritionist, on our vet, our agronomist, our accountant, our lender. We do have a profit team that meets about twice a year, and that would be for operations on the dairy side. And some of those people I just mentioned are a part of that. We want to be transparent to the public. What do we have to hide? Nothing is essentially what it is. So we want to, transparency is important, and be thinking ahead about the future and making changes, to stay current, to be viable in the future, to continue that sustainability. So we're doing the best that we can. Obviously, if you're a dairy producer, you know what milk prices have been like. for the last number of years. It's not always hard to be up, it's not always easy to be up here with a smile. However, when you're doing things that you love, and especially for me being able to raise children on a farm, it feels really good. And my 13-year-old son said to me the other week, he goes, do you know what? He said, when I get married, hopefully I can live on a farm. And he loves a farm, I know that. So I was like, yeah, that'd be good. I said, why? He said, so I can raise my kids on a farm, so they can know what this is like. So sometimes, even growing up, I think I took it for granted, growing up on the farm, and I think my kids take it for granted too. But for him to think through that he's a lucky kid, to be able to be raised on a farm. So thank you very much for being here, for listening to us for all this time. And I think we're going to have a question and answer now.
Thank you to George and Maria, but we'd love to have any questions for them. Did anybody have any questions? I'll run over with a mic.
Does all your milk go through the store, or do you sell some outside?
Well, that's the only retail outlet we have, so the majority of ours is actually sold through DFA, through a co-op. We get 10 to 15% retail.
You still use the silos?
We do. We have three bunker silos now, but we still use some of our uprights, but not as much as we did at one time. We do fill 3 of them yet.
If it would be up to my husband, we wouldn't have any more uprights, or wouldn't be using any of them.
Why is that?
The maintenance of the unloaders and having to climb up the silos to fix them, and it's just not near as convenient as a bunker silo.
It's not as efficient for the way we're set up anymore. It's okay, and they're still okay in some situations, but for us, bunkers have been better.
All right, well, thank you guys so much for attending, and if you know any farmers or businesses like George, Maria, and Oregon Dairy that you think would be great to honor with a sustainability award, we do have some sheets in the back with more information. Our nomination period for 2018 will be opening soon. So thank you again, George, Maria, and thank you to all of you.
Thank you.